Hey, what's up, everybody? Do you have an instrument check ride coming up? Or have you ever asked yourself, what does it take to fly into clouds? What if a pilot can't see? What do you do? Well, this video is going to be for you. So, tune in. I'm going to talk about my instrument check ride experience, my whole entire instrument training in general, how much it cost, how much training and hours it took, and the blood and effort. So, without further ado, let's hop right into it. So, I had my instrument check ride on August 30th of 2024, and it took me about 7 months of training overall. A lot of it was kind of due to the Part 141 program that I was signed up for through my school. They have a very precise program where you have to do everything lesson by lesson, and if you ever mess up on that lesson, you have to redo that lesson, especially for stage checks. There's 3 stage checks. I have other videos on my YouTube talking about them individually, and you learn a lot as you progress. Now, after all 3 of those stage checks, then you take a final stage instrument, like basically like getting you ready for that check ride within school. So, and it's a lot harder in my opinion than the actual flight with the check ride, which is good because that's with the FAA or a DPE examiner. So if you can pass it when it's more difficult with the school, then the check ride in theory should be pretty easy. But there's always, the check ride bidders, plus you're flying with somebody you don't know. That's an examiner that makes or breaks, and they'll either send you home super happy or send you home crying. So definitely very good experience. All right, and then just so everybody knows, this video is going to have a lot of information in it. I'm talking about my entire check ride as far as the ground and the flight portion, and I'm going to go into pretty in-depth for both of it. That way, if you do have a check ride coming up, you can get some knowledge out of it. And if you're just in it for just the pure entertainment and story behind it, then maybe skip a little bit ahead, or even put your YouTube in the 1.5 setting, so that way it kind of goes by faster. I might be talking really fast, I might be talking a lot, but this video is going to be very purposeful for different people. So let's go. All right, so diving right into it, I'll talk about the finances, the hours required, and basically the behind the scenes of the training. And then I'll move right into the actual training itself and what the check ride was. So to start off, the total cost, which is a major one that a lot of people are going to say, on average, I see that, a lot of schools kind of offer the instrument check ride like program or package, kind of around the $10,000 mark. I tallied mine up. It ended up costing me $11,871, and the breakdown of that was about $1,000 in sim time. Actual flight time cost me about $6,400, and then instructor time cost me $4,300. So with all those numbers together, it ended up being $11,800 as my total cost for my check ride, or for my instrument training, should I say. That honestly varies, because that was with the 141 program. That was me following the school syllabus. You can actually do things a lot cheaper in different ways if you are splitting time with somebody. If you go, Part 61, there's ways you can get all the hour requirements that you need in a lesser time. And then maybe if you do even more of the training in the sim, because the sim is about $60 an hour to rent that, versus the Cessna 172 that I'm flying is about $155, $160 an hour. So there's definitely ways you can save, and then I would say I'm around average for what the cost was, so I'm pretty happy about that. Obviously, the main thing is try not to make it too expensive. So now that we talked about the cost, now we'll go ahead and talk about the time that I got for that cost, that price. So I got 17 hours of simulated time. So that's me in the actual simulator, the AATD, BATD, which is like just their training device. 39.2 hours of actual flying. It was 49 flights total, including sims. I shot 54 approaches, 14 holds, 6.3 actual time on my cross countries, so that was pretty cool. And then 40 hours of simulated IFR, so that's basically just you under the foggles. All right, and now, so I'll go ahead and move right into the check ride itself. So the check ride for me was about a 3-hour ground portion, and then it was about a 1.7 hour flight. So all in all was maybe 4 or 5 hours with the DP. For me, it actually had to happen on 2 separate days, because the day of my oral, they actually, it was pretty bad weather outside. It was like a thunderstorm right above the airport. So we had to reschedule for that. I think it was like maybe a week later, which honestly benefited me a lot more after, getting hammered for 3 hours on the oral and on all that technical questions. It's very nice to have that little time to take a break, and then when you go get in the plane, you're fresh and you have a mindset. You've been ready. You maybe even took another practice flight like within that few days prior. So I think that pretty much benefited me pretty well. The oral portion, like I said, it was about 3 hours. He started off with the differences between PAVE and the 5 Ps. He also asked me what inspections are unique to IFR, which is your VOR, altimeter, and then find both of the inspections inside of the maintenance log. He asked me what the different kinds of VOR checks are, so definitely something good to know. They do teach you that, so no biggie. Basic currency questions, so the 66 hits and 3 landings in the past 90 days. That's definitely a major thing you have to know. And you're basically gonna get asked out on every check ride. You just gotta know maybe a little bit more in depth. He asked me pretty basic, what is it? I answered. He's like, all right, moving on. So that was nice. But be prepared in case any of these questions they like to, really dig. That's just how the check rides go. They want to find out what you don't know and how you can overcome that. Then we moved on to, can you fly IFR with basic med and what are the limitations? Which the answer would be yes, but you cannot fly into Class A airspace. Then we went into grab card, which is all of the equipment that is required for an IFR flight. That grab card will be generator, radio, altimeter, ball, clock, altitude indicator, rate of turn, and directional gyro. So once I listed all that out, he started right off with generator. Describe the electrical system. If you found a breaker popped, would you push it back in? No. How many alternators are in the plane? How many batteries? How would you identify an alternator failure? Oh man. Does an alternator failure mean land as soon as practicable or possible? And that one was a little took us a little bit to get to, because you want to obviously follow the POH, but you always want to be safety minded. So if an alternator fails, for example, you do have about 30 minutes standby power where the battery is still running, but obviously you do want to kind of land as soon as possible. Per the POH in the Cessna 172, it says as practicable. His answer was possible. So once I had to go find that inside of the POH, then we were like, okay, well, there is obviously that little difference there, but what would you do? And then he kind of will give you a scenario. And then obviously you gotta let ATC know about the alternator failure and possible loss of comms, transponder, and non-essential electrical equipment you're gonna have to turn off. That way you're not wasting that battery. What system does the altimeter use? Static system or the air data computer if you have like a glass cockpit. How does the ball in a turn coordinator work? Standby is suspended in fluid. The G5 has the brick and the AHRS system. Attitude indicator is G5 in the AHRS. Rate of turn is part of the turn coordinator, which is AHRS slash centrifugal force. Directional gyro is a magnetometer. So after we went over all of the equipment required, then we moved into fuel and personal mins. We went over the flight plan, looked at true airspeed, and show how I found it, which is through the POH. My flight plan had me going from Tampa, picking up people, flying over Sarasota using an IFR routed plan that ACC is most likely to give you, and then going all the way to Miami Executive, KTEB, or TMB, sorry. And then once we get there, the packs basically go to like a football game. And then when we have to plan, make sure I have the fuel, make sure all the weight of the plane is good. I gotta let him know how much fuel we're gonna have when we land. And if he asks what your personal mins are, do not say that the personal mins are the same as the IFR requirement. It should always be more. I messed up there. I said it was the IFR. I felt comfortable there, but I've also never been in that situation. And he just advised me to always have higher personal mins. Right after that, we went into approach plates. So how does the GPS work? How many satellites are needed? And that's going to be 4 at minimum. What is WAS, which is a wide area augmentation system. It's a system that allows more precise navigation and allows us to have a certain RMP. That's exactly what I said, and we moved right on. But remember, they can always dig, and if you want to know more about it, especially if you don't say it with confidence in your voice. Go over RNAV plate and talk about the differences between LNAV and LPV. Let's see what else. We went over lost comms, so your craft clearance and scenario. Then we went over weather after that. He talked to me about airmets, sigmets, convective sigmets, prog charts with your trough, squall line, embedded thunderstorms, and stationary fronts. You got to know all of it. And then we moved into icing, and those are some pretty interesting questions as far as how does it form. Can we fly into known icing? No, not in a Cessna. Where does it form first, which would be the tail? And then how do you recover from a tail stall? How do you recover from a spin? That question, I was like, I knew it, but I was not really prepared for it because I thought that's more of a CFI question. But hey, I mean, that's why you should always be learning and knowledgeable about stuff like that, especially because what if you don't ever go get your CFI and you get into a spin? You never learned it, you never got taught it. So you should be learning that from private, honestly. And then the last thing we talked about was our ICAO flight plan. He asked me what category weight does our aircraft produce, which is light, type of flight, general aviation, all the different equipment codes, which that is where I probably got the most stuck on throughout the whole check ride, just for the fact that we never really went through any of that. Maybe like once in the very beginning of training, but all that I completely forgot. And then how do you pick your altitude for cruise? And what approach can you expect in VFR conditions with minimal fuel? The visual approach. Doesn't have to be an ILS, doesn't have to be RNAV, visual approach. It's VFR. So that was pretty much the ground. Let's move into the flight. All right, so moving into the flight portion. So after the ground, I think it was about a week and a half that passed by until we actually moved on to the flight. So then once we went in the flight, I was honestly kind of worried. Maybe 30 minutes before our scheduled time, it looked like the weather was getting pretty bad. So I called him. I said, hey, like, weather doesn't look too good. I don't know, what do you want to do? He's like, well, what do you want to do? And so ultimately, it kind of really is up to me. Kind of a trick question, because if it's bad weather and I'm like, oh, let's go. All right, well, you basically failed before you even took the test. But I said, it looks close. I looked at the ceilings. I looked at what altitude we were probably going to be about, which was 2,000. I think ceilings were at like 3,500. So it was getting close. The weather was deteriorating, but luckily we were able to knock it out. About 3/4 through the check ride, though, that weather got intensely worse. And then even he was like, all right, we need to start wrapping things up. That way we can remain legal and still make it a good check ride. So that being said, the wind was pretty gusty. I was getting beat up in the plane a lot. I did have a few deviations. However, I was always right on top of it. Anytime I got off my altitude or off my heading, I immediately got right back onto it. I fixed anything that I needed to fix. And that's really what the DP is looking for. You know, if you're completely getting lost because you're trying to play with your iPad or tune this on the GPS or whatever it might be, and then next thing you know, you're like in a 180 turn upside down. All right, not a safe pilot. But if you're off by 5-10 degrees and you hop right back on it, you notice it, you're having your instrument scan, then you're showing that you're a safe pilot and that you're attentive. So that's pretty much how that went. But it was a little more difficult. So we left Tampa Executive. Immediately after leaving Tampa Executive, we hit a right east departure, and he wanted me to set up for the ILS 10 at Lakeland. So it's an ILS approach that I've done many times. However, I didn't load everything into the GPS prior. I got airborne and then I started trying to load things in. So once I talked to like Tampa Approach or Class Bravo, I requested the ILS 10, and as I was talking to him, he was already like, okay, cool, intercept the slope, the localizer. And I was like, oh wait, I'm already here. I didn't have the weather. I didn't have anything tuned into the GPS. So I was like freaking out a little bit. The check ride just started. I'm like, oh crap, I'm already failed. Luckily, I called back ATC. I said, hey, all right, I need 2-3 minutes to set things up for the weather. I need to set up, my GPS and whatnot. And he said, all right, cool. He gave me a vector to go northbound. And then once I got everything I needed, called him back, said, hey, now I'm ready. Then he said, all right, cool. Go directly to this fix on the approach plate. I briefed the plate. And then I did the ILS. He gave me alternate missed instructions to the north. And then, which actually is what we normally do for training. However, the DP wanted me to actually do the missed approach procedure. So I told ATC I couldn't do it. If I could just get the regular missed. He said, okay, yeah, no problem. So we shoot the ILS into Lakeland, go missed, start heading northbound. As we're heading northbound, then we cancel the flight following the approach. Basically, we go back to VFR, and then Lakeland has a VOR on field. So since we're already went missed at Lakeland, he immediately gives me a VOR to track outbound on Lakeland. And I was maybe 20 degrees off, so I had to just tune it in real quick. Luckily, I kind of had everything set up at that point, and then was able to go track it. At first, I did kind of like stop for a second because I wanted to figure out what the frequencies were and, what my altitude was, making sure I don't bust anything. And he was kind of pressuring a little bit. He was like, hey, I want you to go track it now. Like, go track it now. And I was just kind of like, okay, yeah, give me a second. In the real world scenario, your passengers can't pressure you into you flying the plane. You got to fly the plane. You got to do things when you're ready at your timing. And yes, they need to be at a certain standard and at a good pace, but I took that as a lesson as, yes, he was rushing, but ultimately it's safer for me to not make a dumb decision because I feel pressured and then fail or worse. So we tracked that outbound over by Lakeland. We track it for maybe 2 minutes. And then right after that, we go into maneuvers. So then he had me do clearing turns. Right after clearing turns, we did unusual attitudes. And then we also did, what was this over here? Oh, compass turns. So pretty simple, no steep turns, no stalls, which was, good. Just very easy maneuvers, got them done quick. As we're going northbound, we actually were setting up for the opposite runway in Zephyr Hills, KZPH, and that was for that way when we shoot that approach. So the active was 5, the opposite was 2-3. So we set up the RNAV for 2-3. That way we could do a circling approach. So that being said, I had to, Zephyr Hills has a CTAF. So it's just a frequency where a bunch of people are talking. I had to tune into there, listen to the weather, figure out which runway they're using. I also had the GPS, so it kind of like was a little easier. But if you're lacking any of those skills, then that could be pretty difficult. Found out they were using runway 5, so I set up for 2-3. We do one procedure turn into the approach. But Zephyr Hills at that point, if anybody who's watching, if you're familiar with Zephyr Hills, that place is a madhouse. Lots of planes all the time. There's a skydiving operation there, and then a lot of student pilots, and then just a lot of cowboys. So, of course, during my check ride, all that was going on at the same time. So there was like 6-7 planes in the pattern, and we're trying to do an opposite runway approach. So we ended up doing 2 laps into the hold, let it die down. By the time all that died down, then we shot the approach, did our circling, landed on 5. He told me, because at this point, this is where the weather was pretty bad. He told me we can just do a touch and go and go back, but we're already an hour and a half in. Like, I've been flying this whole time. I've been doing all these little things. I said, you know what? Let's do a full stop taxi back. I'm gonna get myself reorganized, and basically just take a breather for a second. No need to rush it at all. So we land, we taxi back, we're holding short. I'm doing all my checklists, I'm making sure I'm good. And then I'm getting ready for whatever the next task he is. So I'm putting those frequencies, I'm putting the GPS, I'm setting everything up on the ground this time before I take off. Lesson learned very early into the check ride. So then we take off, and then the rest was pretty uneventful. We flew back to Tampa Executive, and then we did the RNAV 1.8 into it. And then the RNAV 1.8 actually breaks off into the left downwind for 5, which was the runway we were using. So that was pretty cake. Just did that, landed, taxied back to the FBO, and I passed. So now instrument rated. This video is actually pretty late from where I'm posting it. It's been super busy. I'm actually almost done with the commercial, but hey, one video is better than no video. And I actually do have a lot of content that I've been still recording, still saving up. I just haven't been making those videos yet because I needed to knock this video out. So I'm so happy. If you have any questions, please reach out either in the comments. I have my link tree, also in my bio. You can hit me up on Instagram, on YouTube, and I'm going to be looking into helping out other people. I also have little shorts and reels and stuff like that of content that helped me. If there's ever like any study guides that you guys would like, also let me know in the comments about that, and maybe I can create something, or I can just share kind of what I used. So without further ado, thank you so much for watching the video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.